All right, let's kick this off together today. Thank you so much, Faith, Alysse, and Kendall, for joining me. Hi, everyone. Good morning from here in California. Kendall and I have our coffee. She's also on Pacific time. There we go. And good afternoon to our friends in the UK and beyond. We are really excited today to welcome you to the wonderful world of sports technology. I'm Marilou McFarlane, the CEO and founder of Women in Sports Tech, which we call WiST. We're delighted to host you all today for this informal roundtable powered by our friends at TeamViewer, who recently launched the She Sport Tech campaign, which, Faith, we've really enjoyed collaborating with you on. More on this later. In the meantime, please post in the chat, everyone, where in the world you are. One of our favorite things about this industry is how global in scope we really are. Let me tell you a little bit about my own background and how I got to this point in my career. And then I want to go around and have my panelist guests tell us your twist and turn story. I got to this point in my career organically, but first I want to give you a little background on WiST. So those of you who are new to WiST, I'd like you to know a little bit about our organization. We have become the most valuable workforce accelerator for diverse talent at the intersection of sports and tech. WiST's innovative programs, original content, and global community for women and employers provide career support and growth opportunities that drive business innovation and success. I hope that you'll all go to our website and you can learn more about our programs, including our flagship initiative, the WiST Fellowship Program and the WiST Network. Shout out to our 2024 WiST Fellows who are here with us on the call today as part of their professional development workshops that we provide throughout the summer. So I began my own career as an intern at Turner Broadcasting when I was a student athlete in college at University of North Carolina. They hired me full time after I graduated and moved me to San Francisco, where I was a regional marketing manager. Then I went to KCBS Radio to work in advertising and marketing. So I spent the first half of my career in traditional media. As digital media was coming on the scene, I quickly had to scratch a terrible itch I had and came to sports tech organically with my first startup in 2009, which we called Vivo Girls Sports. We were the first digital media property and an online resource to inspire teenage girls to keep playing sports. We built a thriving community of over 50,000 girls in less than a year, generated $100,000 in revenue, proudly inspired the launch of ESPNW, which you'll see was around 2010, 2011. This incredible startup experience led me to leadership roles with other sports tech startups, mostly in athlete, team, and coach performance, where I was often the only woman in the room. You can see where this is leading. So in 2017, I founded WiST, and here we are, inspiring women just like you all here to join this exciting industry, which is rapidly diversifying and working hard to improve business cultures. We know the impact that we've had, and it's taken a ninja army of business leaders and board members like Alysse and Kendall to get us to where we are now. So now I'm excited to introduce you to our panelists for today. Let's run around the room. Faith, Alysse, and then Kendall, tell us about your own career journey. Like me, I know it wasn't a straight line. There were many twists and turns and pivot points in your careers where you had to make decisions. And then after introductions, I'll share my screen and we'll run through a presentation for everyone that will include all the categories of sports tech, and we'll share our insights and experience with everyone. So let's start with you, Faith.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. And we are, really proud that we're working together on the She Sport Tech initiative, which we'll talk about at the end. So my career journey also hasn't been very linear, particularly within sports. I've always worked in IT and tech for the last 20 years. And actually, one of the first jobs that I had was in a small tech startup who decided that they were going to sponsor the Jordan Formula One racing team, which was pretty unusual at the time because a small startup having, I can't even remember what the fee was, but it was fairly significant. To be on the side of the Jordan racing team was quite incredible. And so me in my early 20s, I had the pleasure of being the sports sponsorship manager. And every other weekend, I was jumping on a plane, business class, all over the world, really supporting the team in terms of the branding and the activation and the corporate hospitality, and, you know, having an absolutely amazing time. That was actually quite short-lived because the company decided they couldn't afford to sponsor the car or the team anymore. And so then I've had a gap of around, 15 years of, always working in marketing positions within other IT companies. And it wasn't until 18 months ago when I joined TeamViewer. And one of the reasons why I did join TeamViewer was because they sponsor the Mercedes Formula One team and also Manchester United. So I was incredibly excited about being able to rekindle my youth again, and really do some fantastic work for TeamViewer with our sports partners. So that's how I got to where I am today and where I am now.
Fantastic. Thank you. How exciting. Yeah, it's nice having the corporate expense account to fly all over business class. I don't know that happens for everyone so much anymore. That's awesome. Thank you, Faith.
Thank you.
Alysse, let's go with you and then Kendall.
So it's an honor and a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Faith, for supporting WiST and everything that you're doing. One of the common themes I think that everybody's going to hear today from Marilou, Kendall, Faith, and myself is that your career is both by default and by design. You can make things happen, and then things happen to you. And my experience is no different. I was an athlete as a kid, and I played. I was on the varsity team in college, so I always thought, well, I was just going to go right into sports marketing. And this is probably before many of you were born, but back then, which what I'm going to say is the late 80s, roles in sports for women, few and far between. And I played ice hockey. So when new teams opened up, they loved the idea of a woman being, their novel person on the team. And but you couldn't get into a sport unless you knew how to play it, especially not a sport like hockey. And so I was very fortunate that I was able to work at a team, and then went to the NHL. I was at the NHL for 17 years, growing 10 teams over the course of 10 years, and then running marketing. And it was wonderful. And over that course in time, we women became more and more engaged in the world of sports. And that was by design. And then by default was, things at the NHL had changed, which is what is, change is constant. And so I actually left sports, and I went into digital media and advertising technology. And I did that because sports at that time were basically Luddites when it came to digital transformation. And I wanted to understand the technology that was driving all these other verticals. And so I was there for about 10 years. And then I actually went back to business school because I wanted to learn the things I didn't know how to do. And then when I came out of business school, it became clear to me that, there is this thing called the startup world. And startups were creating the technologies that were moving sports forward. So I started to get involved in that. And then today, with my startup hat on, I run the venture side of something called Underdog Venture Team, which is a venture studio. So we invest in early stage startups in the world of sports. Most of our investments are in female founders and founders of color, and we do that with intent. But the reason that I share this is because never would I have thought that what I would be doing today was even in existence or would ever happen, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. So that's kind of the design default kind of thought process that I think everybody goes through at some particular stage in their life, if not more than once.
Thank you, Alysse. And yes, staying open to the opportunities. And that's a big part of this, right? Is being open to something new that you maybe hadn't considered before, and you weren't so entrenched with your identity over here that you couldn't go do this. I think that's important. Kendall, how about you? Hi.
Yeah, good morning. I I like to say that I started my career in sports at a young age. I was a ball girl for the Minnesota Lynx, the WNBA team, when I was 14. And that really kind of opened my eyes to, what it means to be outside of being on the court from a basketball perspective. But it also still, most of the people that I saw were the doctors or the trainers and the coaches. And so that was kind of my lens of what working in sports meant. I was always interested and good at math and science. And so went to undergrad to study physics, made my first pivot when I did not pass university physics and decided to move into sociology, but continued my interest in math and end up doing an engineering program with Georgia Tech. And that's kind of where I had a chance to really kind of bring together the things that I was truly passionate about, which ended up being business and math and how those things kind of really came together. I started my career in consulting as a management consultant with Accenture. I kind of, if you were to put it in a bucket, I was kind of doing FP&A, so financial planning and analysis. I built Excel models to help companies with different operational challenges, help them solve, kind of people, process, and technology issues. I did that for 4 years. I was on the road Monday through Thursday every week for 4 years, and took 2 weeks of vacation in 4 years, which was not good. And so that leads to burnout, in case you wanted to know where that path ends. And to kind of solve that, I went to business school. And, I think similar to the stories we've heard so far, business school was where I had a chance to pivot. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I needed a break. And so went to business school and really kind of a bit to what Alysse was saying, right place at the right time, particularly on the team and league side, this kind of new entity called business intelligence or kind of business strategy and analytics groups were popping up that were kind of looking at, okay, things from in Marilou's world around athlete performance and what was happening on the course or on the course or the pitch, where had been using analytics for a long time, but analytics had not been really applied to the business side. And the business side kind of being in the world of ticket sales, food and beverage sales, corporate partnerships, and that really started to pique my interest. And so I found that to be kind of a lane of interest for me and pursued that. Spent some time in golf, then I've been in hockey for the last 5 years.
Oh, fantastic. And all of your education, who inspired you toward your education, Kendall, would you say? As you went and got 2 masters.
Well, so
Driven?
I have 2 bachelor degrees and then a master's.
Okay.
Who inspired me? This is probably not the correct answer, but I would say I was pretty financially inspired.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And willing to spend the money short term for
Yeah.
the longer term gain. Yes. It's interesting. I worked for Turner Broadcasting. Ted Turner wouldn't hire you if you had an MBA. He didn't want marketing people with MBAs. So it's interesting how those early relationships form the path that you take. Well, thank you for that. Let me share my screen. And everyone, I'm aware the chat's not enabled, and we don't know why, but bear with us. You can also post in the Q&A for everyone if you have something to share. Okay, let me share my screen. And I would love for someone to give me a thumbs up that you can see. Do you see the full screen? Fabulous. Thank you. Okay, so everyone, again, welcome to the amazing world of sports tech, where you're all welcome. So sports tech as a category is exploding with opportunities, everyone. It is an amazing business where really we define it very broadly, because any role in the sports business is powered by technology. So we define it very broadly to include these categories, which we're going to go through with you and share with you a little bit about all the different ways you can work in this industry, from athlete performance, athlete team event management, digital media, esports and gaming, fan and sponsor experience, fantasy sports and betting, sports properties, teams and leagues, and also stadium and venue innovation. So the idea here is we're going to get your brain flowing and your juices flowing with all these ways to work in this business that you may not have known about before. So we know that careers in sports tech are also not all technical. Just, we need engineers, we need product people, we need marketing people, including data science and data analytics people in all areas of these businesses that you're about to learn about. What's interesting is I think many of us know at this point that women who've been athletes, and I would include avid sports fans to this, you do grow up and do perform better in your career as an executive. More than 90% of Fortune 500 C-level executives played a sport growing up. So like you, Kendall, and like we've all said, we really are here to encourage you towards sports and STEM, because from some of us, I also love science and math. I was never encouraged towards it, and we want everyone to understand that it is all accessible for you. So let's first talk about athlete performance. And Alysse, I'll kick us off. Two of us can tag team on this one, but this is really around apparel, footwear, and tracking. So this is Kate Courtney, who happens to be a friend of ours and trains here in Marin County where we live. And she's so into the data, in the realm of people focusing on data. I'm way far into the extremes. I love it. It's really motivating for me to have the ability to focus on these things and make progress. So at the end of the day, the sports business, you need the business side to succeed, to sell tickets, generate revenue, keep fans happy, but this is critically important for athletes to avoid injury, rehab from injury, train effectively. And now we know more than ever, women athletes need to be trained differently than male athletes, which finally, thanks to companies like Wild AI, which you see here, women's bodies are not men's bodies. And so we're working also towards getting more research for female athletes. Nix is a product here in the corner that I wish I had as a marathon runner. It's about hydration and can use AI to predict for you your best what to drink, when to drink, and how much to drink. Amazing. The Aura Ring, another partner of ours at WiST, which many of you are familiar with. And Alysse, what would you say? I mean, I know this is an area as a VC, you see a lot of these too. You and I are very involved in this category.
So the beauty of something like tracking or player tracking, health monitoring, is a lot of it you'll find starts in the world of sports with athletes, because they're kind of like that perfect test market. And then when they hit on something that works incredibly well, what you see is it goes down to the mainstream, right? Which if you're an investor is very important. So that's what happened with Nix. That's what happened with Aura. That's what happened with Fitbit. And so one of the beauties of being able to be a part of this in the beginning with a technology that is tracking an athlete's health, their sleep, their biometrics, their perspiration, all of these things, which are critical pieces of information that, just as an example, an elite athlete needs, the ability for those elite athletes to be able to share, we think this is great, but the metrics of the improvement is what the mainstream, we can all benefit from. And that's one of the drivers of these technologies, which is actually really exciting.
It's so exciting. And you mentioned biometrics for sure, but also biomechanics.
Yep. Any way that you can measure.
Next mobile app, that same session can tell a young pitcher how to properly pitch in order to avoid injury. And it's been remarkable from the Little League all the way up to MLB. So check all these out. And now let me go to our next category, which is athlete, team, and event management. So Faith, let's let you take this one. And I know you also have a budding young athlete who you have the ability to use TeamSnap or something like that to register her, right? When my kids were young, we were doing it on paper and pen. It was ridiculous. So tell us about TeamViewer and also your personal experience.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, TeamViewer is a technology IT company, so we don't directly create products or services for sports people per se. However, with our partnership with Manchester United and Mercedes as well, we are developing technological solutions to help improve athlete and team performance. So one of those areas that we're working on with Mercedes actually is our trackside use case. So we know within Formula One, every millisecond counts, and the ability to get data and analyze it is critically important, and it can be the difference between you winning a race or losing a race. And so what we do is we enable the teams to access real-time data really quickly. It means that they can then analyze it in real time, and then they can make judgments on performance. And the beauty of it is that you don't necessarily need all of the data analysts or the technical team with the racing team in the country that they're racing in. You can actually have it back at their headquarters. So effectively using the technology is improving performance. It's making it go much, much faster. And then just one of the other use cases that we also have with Mercedes, again, it's about analyzing the data, and it's about, doing that testing work, that development work, either remotely or sort of back in the factory. And again, it's just offering the whole team efficiency and improvement, and ultimately productivity as well. So that's really how we're supporting Mercedes.
It's just incredible. So Kendall, tell us from your perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the kind of biggest pieces here is, how much technology can really enhance what's happening to kind of keep both sides together. So a little bit of context, right? There's team operations. So think basketball, hockey, that's going to be your GMs, your front office, and then business operations. And I think for a long time, those have been operating in very unique silos. And I think the technologies in this space are really helping kind of blend those two pieces together, and kind of take down some of those siloed walls.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you don't know what coaches or business owners or leaders did before this technology, right? To have it all come into one central hub is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Awesome. I don't know. Am I good? I think my internet went down briefly a second ago.
Slides.
Are we all good?
We don't see the slides.
Here we go. Something, I don't know what happened here. There we go. Are we back? Awesome. All right. So digital media, and we know, everyone here knows how dramatically we've been impacted by digital media, social media. What I love is to see Just Women's Sports here. There's a number of female-focused digital media now, and women's sports, we laugh, women's sports are a 50-year overnight success. But I think from my point of view, that technology has really driven the way that women's sports are now respected and valued, and people understand the ROI for a sponsor is so much different than it is, than they ever knew, because they didn't have the ability to measure what they were doing with their brand on social media, and of course what NIL is doing. But Alysse, what would you say? It's been interesting too. When we started WiST, Sport Techie was well ahead of its time. It was around the same time we started WiST that Sport Techie launched, and now of course they're owned by Sport Business Journal. But Alysse, what would you say? Because I know you've been in the media, on the media side of this as well.
So, digital media offers is the best and the worst. And what I mean by that is it's the best because it can share very specific information with very specific target audiences. So if you want to be able to be laser focused on the target audience you want to be able to reach, you could use digital and social to be able to do that. But then, of course, on the other hand, is there is misinformation and disinformation, which is very confusing to the target market. But the beautiful thing about digital, right, and I say digital and social together, is that you can measure your access, you can measure your responses, you can measure how many people you're meeting, you can measure the ROI, which is really, really important in the world of sports, because so often you have the message, but the message is always tied to sponsors. The message could be tied to the team. The message could be tied to the athletes. So the ability to be able to measure and track that data and then translate that into ROI, that was never really done properly before. And so those equations are always being, iterated on. But the beauty of being able for a women's sports league, a women's sports team, to be able to engage in digital media where they can precisely target, that is the kind of thing that is bringing consistent value. And, if you can target your market, you are better off for everybody. Everybody benefits.
I agree. And I think one point I want to reiterate is you mentioned the misinformation and disinformation. When I worked at CBS, we had such tight controls over being able to put anything on the air it was triple fact checked, right? So I think it's a really interesting time for journalists and for those of us who take in media, because it's really having an impact on our whole society, and a lot of the misinformation is at fault for that. So that we'll talk more about this when we get to the fan and sponsor engagement. Okay, so real quickly, we would be remiss if we didn't tell you about some of these other categories that we haven't necessarily worked in, but I can tell you esports and gaming are massive with the young demographic online. I know many of you know people who compete. It's here in the United States on its way to becoming an NCAA scholarship supported sport, which I think is amazing. And it's a lot of respect for these athletes who do things. I mean, the hand-eye coordination is beyond what I can even fathom. And the staying power, there's a lot to be said, and it could be debated, but it is a significant industry that we wanted to make sure you're all aware of, with a lot of opportunity. Fan and sponsor experience. So we did just talk about this a little bit, but it's been interesting to me to see all the different tools available. So you were mentioning, Alysse, why don't you tell us, because I know you're on Zoom. Amir is one of our best friends on our board. He's the CEO of Zoom, and you work closely with them as well. Some of their technology, right, has changed the way fans and the way sponsors spend their sponsor dollars. So why don't we have you, Alysse, and Kendall tell us about this one?
Sure, I'll talk about it from like the big picture, and I know Kendall, in the role she plays now, can get more granular. But the reason that fan and sponsor experience is so important in the world of sports is that sponsors pay sports for access to their fan base, both inside the arena or the playing field or the stadium and beyond. And it is critical to be able to measure that, which is what I was talking about, digital and social. But there are tools out there that have revolutionized how sports can measure their sponsor engagement. And Zoom is an example of one of them. Zoom is like a digital measurement. So they get to look at everything that is going on in a feed that is related to the team and the team and the sponsorship of that, and identify literally the ROI tied to that, which makes it easier for a team to be able to go to a sponsor and say, this is the value that you're getting. So in the bigger picture, the teams and leagues always want to be able to identify who their fans are, both in the arena and the playing field and beyond, because it is those fans that are generating value in the terms of an ROI for a sponsor reach, value in the terms of repeat usage for a team. And I know that this sounds very technical and it's all business oriented, but it is. So any tools that can accurately measure how fans engage and how fans are committed is really important for the team, for the fan, for the stakeholder, and for the sponsor. So I'm going to turn it over to Kendall because she's got a bird's eye view. She measures this all day long.
Yeah, it's everything, I'll talk a little bit about, the transition that has really happened that's kind of made all of these platforms kind of really come to life. And I was reminded yesterday in a conversation with someone that, like, when we were growing up, we used to go to Minnesota Wild hockey games and the kids sold programs like for a dollar, like you would hand them actual cash, like $1, and then you would get like a game specific program back. And the my sustainability and like the amount, I'm sure none of those things were recycled, red flags went off like crazy, but also like the handing over of cash was kind of wild. The fact that the kids like just put the cash like in their pocket was like a kind of like a thing that I'm like, this is crazy. But a lot has happened because that wasn't that long ago. And a biggest part of that has been a transition to mobile phones. Everything happens on a mobile phone. I sign my daughter up for dance on a mobile phone. I entertain myself while she's at dance on my mobile phone. Buy tickets to various events, sporting and non-sporting. Everything happens from my phone. And that has been a piece that sports has really transitioned to from a fan experience perspective. So much of converting fans from being interested in something to actually attending something, how they get in the building, what happens when they're in the building. So much of that is driven by how easy is that experience on their mobile phone. And so when I look at the companies down here, some of them, are in what Alysse was talking around, the kind of sponsor side of the world, but some of them are at the forefront of making it super easy for fans mobile. That is what sets them apart from everybody else, is the ease for the consumer. And so I think whether you're thinking about founding a company, whether you're thinking about working for these companies, how your knowledge and abilities as it relates to mobile, social media, and how that appears on on mobile, all of that is huge from a fan experience perspective.
Absolutely. And I think we could debate the time that we do spend on our phones, but it seems like it's here, it's upon us, and how you can make it productive, engaging, and in this point, work the brand loyalty so that you do feel part of the larger community. I think that's really a big part of what fandom is. So thank you for those. And these are some amazing brands to check out if you haven't heard of them. Okay, fantasy sports and betting. And this is you, Kendall. I did not know, this is a fun fact about you, that you are an avid fantasy sports betting. You tell us the difference. Tell us what you.
Yeah. Well, I would say I started off avid fantasy sports. You don't think about it that way, but I mean, from the time I can remember, I've been doing an NCAA basketball tournament bracket, even just within our family. And in so many, I didn't have a name of fantasy sports then, but that's basically what you're doing, right? You're making predictions for a variety, whatever your reasoning may be, you're making predictions about who might win. I think especially in the States, when you add in the word betting, things start to get a bit more challenging, as actually putting money on sporting events is different in state to state. And especially, I think if you're not in the United States, if you look at the policies of how it works in the United States, you'd probably be a little shocked. But it does kind of add a significant wrinkle. Being in Washington, we have a long-standing history with Native American tribes, and are really kind of put that group at the forefront. And so from a betting standpoint, everything runs through the tribes. So there is no kind of online sports betting. There's, you can't go to a ballpark and like place bets or go to horse racing and kind of do bets there either. But if you're kind of over on the East Coast near Alysse, New York is, quite wide open. And so things are definitely different. I think one of the big pieces when you think about a career in fantasy sports and betting is, kind of deciding, it gets back to a little bit of what I was saying before, you being on the technology side and the data and analytics that go into the bet line and what kind of stats are you betting on and how you want to best position the line, whether for the casino or for some of the companies here at the bottom. But also remember that they're all businesses, right? So there is someone who's like actually an accountant who works for these companies. There's people who work in marketing. There's people who work in advertising. There's people who work in partnerships and working with athletes, working with other brands. So there are people who work on the partnerships with, the venues and the leagues themselves. So there's lots of roles outside of just being the person who determines the line. And so I think that's an important piece to think about, is that if this is kind of an area of interest for you, right, whether you play, fantasy football, fantasy soccer, a lot of people play fantasy baseball, whatever it may be, if that's a passion and interest of yours, take a look at some of these companies. And even if you, like I said, don't want to be kind of on the tech side, there's definitely other opportunities within these companies.
And thank you for that, Kendall. And I do want to address one of the questions from the audience, because I do think this is an interesting place to remind you that she says she's been working in healthcare cybersecurity. The things you're doing in other tech businesses completely can apply over in a sports tech business. So, as we talked about, there's a lot of overlap with health tech and fit tech. Alysse mentioned Fitbit. I mean, there's just a lot of opportunity to take your existing skills and transfer them into this industry following your passion. Like if this is something you enjoy, that's, a large part of what we encourage people, because you're going to perform better if you love what you're doing and you love the business that you're in. I'm having so much more fun in this industry than I did, in broader, just general media. Okay, sports properties, teams and leagues. This is a really fun one. We have, for those of you not in the United States, we're in the midst of massive upheaval with our NCAA as a league. That's a conversation in itself that we could have, but I think what's really fun to see is the women's pro leagues starting to take off as well. Here, the WNBA has always been amazing, and currently, again, back to media, social media, the ability to measure athletes' ROIs all of a sudden, and game ratings, all of a sudden, the WNBA is an overnight success. But what would you all say in terms of career opportunities here? I mean, I know the NWSL is growing. Alysse, what would you add here? Alysse and Kendall, let's see what you have here.
So again, I'm going to start off with the kind of the broader spectrum, and I know that Kendall is going to go a bit deeper, but so sports properties are teams and leagues, right? And the goal of a sports property is to, as always, generate revenue, right? But today, the revenue lines are there are many of them. And we always looked at kind of 4 core buckets for generating revenue for sports properties, right? They were rights holders, which are those the media deals that you see, billion-dollar deals for the rights to be able to air, first run of any games that are going on in a team or a league. There's sponsorship, which goes 24/7, that generates revenue for the teams and the leagues. There's tickets, which are, how many tickets are going to be sold at any home game and then going into playoffs and hopefully finals. And then there's merchandise. Those were always kind of the 4 core buckets of revenue. That was, up until about 20 years ago. And now there are all of these revenue streams that are opening up opportunities for people who may never have had an open window, right? There are technical, obviously there's all of that business intelligence. There's the operations side. So meaning that if you're more on the sports side than you are on the business side, there's the team ops, which is everything that is related to scouting, to players, to performance, to, general managers. All of those things have expanded now because they are all underscored by some form of technology that drives productivity, but it also helps to minimize costs, right? Because everybody has to follow a budget. So there are more teams and more leagues operating in the world today, basically, than there have ever been. I mean, if you're in the US, all of a sudden, cricket is becoming one of the most important sports, which a few years ago, we never would have even thought about because we didn't have a demographic that supported that. So what I'm saying is that if you have a passion for sports, okay, and you have a business model that you understand and engage in, it's actually easier than ever to transform that into, it's cross-functional going into the world of sports than it ever was before.
Wow, 100%. That's pretty good, pretty comprehensive. Thank you, Alysse. That was super helpful. Kendall, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I kind of talk to my group about is, there are so many teams and leagues around the world beyond just the ones that you see on the news on a daily basis. We talked a little bit about media, but don't, the media is driving what's kind of hot that at the moment. Don't forget about the fact that there are so many other teams and leagues that that could use your help and assistance and would really value your skills. I see a lot of, people, I'm a big basketball person. Everyone's like, hey, how do I get into the NBA? Yeah, that's, there are millions of people asking that same question, but I can tell you that one way to start is to find yourself working in basketball in general, maybe not for the NBA, but for a G League team or working with your local youth basketball organization. And so one of the questions in the chat is from Terry, and the question is, how do you get the sports companies to recognize transferable skills? And one way that I recommend it is to use your transferable skills in sport or sport adjacent opportunities. So whether that's volunteering for the local youth sports association and, managing kind of that league as a volunteer, whether that's volunteering for nonprofit organizations and doing the finance and accounting for that organization, using those skills in opportunities that will allow you to then on your resume say, or in an interview say, yes, I work in blank industry, but in my spare time, here's how I've used these skills within the broader sports industry. And I think, kind of echoing Alysse's piece, every single team and league needs everybody and every skill. There's not really one that's not on the table anymore. You might have previously said, oh, I'm an app developer. What do sports teams need app developers? I'm like, well, we just built our own in-house app over the course of the last 3 years and have a team of 4 developers on staff. So you can find, I think, everything that you're looking for in sports and entertainment if you look hard enough.
Oh, such a great point about working for a local, smaller organization. So it reminds me, I was president of our Mill Valley Soccer Club for 3,000 kids, and it's a nonprofit. And I learned so much about leadership in that setting. Obviously, we were all volunteers, so much about being one of the only women. And because of that experience running that nonprofit, I had more confidence when it was time to launch WiST. And to your point, it went on your resume that shows how much you love sport, how much you're willing to volunteer your time to give back. All of that is just really good business. So great point. Thank you. Okay, quickly, because I do want to get Faith, you time to talk about She Sport Tech. Let's talk about stadium and venue innovation. Kendall, your quote is here. And the Climate Pledge Arena is certainly remarkable in the first of so many things. But I also just want to get Faith to tell us about how TeamViewer applies in this. It's super interesting how you're using technology and AI.
Absolutely. Before I do that, I was just gonna, I wanted to add on to Kendall's point about not
Please.
always striving to work at the best club or the best team or whatever. In actual fact, in the UK, we see a lot of innovation happening at the much lower league clubs because they can be more agile and they have more freedom to try new things.
Yes.
And there's a club locally to me, Lewis Football Club, who actually decided they were going to start paying the men's team the same as the women's team. And the manager at the club really led the way and created a bit of a movement, and of course it got a lot of attention. So I strongly encourage people thinking about getting into sports technology. You don't always have to aim high. Start at the bottom, learn your skills, learn your trade, and then you can go into other teams and clubs with that experience. So I just wanted to add that bit on there.
100%. Thank you.
So TeamViewer technology. So we have a really interesting use case with Manchester United, which is how we use our product, TeamViewer Tensor, to remotely control the watering of the pitches. And so previously, before we implemented our technology, if the ground was dry or there wasn't enough people to actually get around the club, they didn't know which field to prioritize. It was a very manual process. But what we've worked with Manchester United to do is to remotely control their irrigation system. So it doesn't matter, again, where they are, whether they're at Carrington is where the women's team train. But if they know that Old Trafford, for example, where the men train, the grounds need watering there, they can remotely control and obviously put on the sprinklers or whatever it's called to do that, which is obviously saving the club a lot of time and money and efficiency. It's more motivational for the staff. They're not sort of running around and trying to figure it all out. And again, it's just another way that people can start to apply technology to the field of sports. So I thought I'd just share that with you.
I think it's exciting, and I'd like to know if you're in the United States with that technology yet, because I think it would be widely embraced here.
Our technology can work anywhere.
Okay, good to know. All right, so anything you'd want to add, Kendall, since do you go to work every day at Climate Pledge Arena?
I don't. We built a 3-rink training facility in North Seattle. And so our offices are here and the hockey team practices here as well.
Okay. Well, anything you'd add about the arena?
I think on the arena operations, similar to what Faith said, everyone's kind of looking for ways to utilize technology to optimize different aspects of the arenas and the buildings themselves. I think as entertainment has come back out of COVID, the experiences are numerous. I know our arena folks are going from concert to storm game to 2 concerts in a row to high school graduations, back to different concerts, and that takes quite a lot of time. I would say, I think stadium operations and kind of dovetailing it back into what I mentioned about fan experience, there's all sorts of cool and unique things that are happening in this space. I do think that one of the benefits coming out of COVID is perhaps like the ending of what we call traditional like belly up concession stands, where everyone, there's the concession, there's a counter, and then everyone lines up behind the checkout, and you kind of have to wait, and each person orders their food, they come back and get it. I think that we're seeing a massive transition away from that and into two kind of technologies. One is self-checkout, which I think if you've been to a grocery store in the last kind of 5 years, you've experienced this. Where you're basically responsible for scanning and bagging your own groceries. That same concept is happening in arenas and venues where you grab your items and you are kind of responsible for doing the scanning and paying in a kiosk. And then kind of on the rise are these concepts by Amazon, and others exist out there as well, which are called Just Walk Out, which use a camera system that you can scan your credit card or your palm. You walk into the space, and then whatever you take off the shelves is kind of witnessed and viewed by the cameras. And then as you leave over by the end of the night, your credit card gets charged whatever you walked out with. And so those are all, big kind of efficiencies that are happening, and they're all kind of centered around kind of throughput of food, beverage, and retail, and then also centered around getting people back in their seats so that you can maximize TV viewership where you don't want your seats to be empty coming out of a break.
Oh, so also interesting. And we've all experienced it, right? I mean, even going to ski resorts, you can just literally carry your food out. The camera sees it, charges you're on your way. It's pretty remarkable. And I do think a lot of this did come out of COVID. So super interesting. Thank you. And now let's go to everyone resource page. And then I'm going to turn this over to Faith. Please go to our WiST website. There is all kinds of WiST Presents content. There's a career toolkit, get our newsletter. Here's a QR code that takes you to a resource page on our website. And there you'll find a link to She Sport Tech. And I'd love, Faith, for you to tell a little bit about this program because it's so awesome. We're so delighted to present it with you and for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's such an exciting program, and that's why it's been so wonderful to talk with you all today and have some fantastic panelists sharing their experience of sport technology. So we came up with this initiative a few months ago now because we have the privilege of being a partner of two of the biggest sporting brands in the world. And we also provide technology to those partners. And we really saw that there was an opportunity to raise the profile of sports technology across the industry, particularly for women. So a lot of technology companies that I've worked in before, you do huge initiatives around women in IT and getting more women into IT. But what we don't talk about is being very specific about technology and sports technology. And so we created this program working with both of our sporting partners and of course WiST as well, to really think about how we can support women into considering roles and career changes in sports technology. So we have identified role models across our partners who have built a career in sports technology. They've worked from the bottom up, or some of them have actually even pivoted from a career potentially like mine, but more into specifics. And those role models have been featured across social media. They're also featured on the She Sport Tech website to give inspiration to women. And so what we're offering is actually a grant program where we would like to support 5 women in their career, into their journey of building a career in sports technology. And so we have suggested courses that they might like to go on with contribution from TeamViewer. And then we're also offering one-to-one mentoring with our mentors that we have selected across the partners. Anyone has to do, if you're interested in applying for the grant, is to just fill out a short application form, but you don't have long. So the closing date is actually on the 30th of June. And then we'll be making the shortlist application process, and we'll be selecting the winners very, very shortly. So please do go on to She Sport Tech, look at the role models, look at the courses that have been suggested, but more importantly, think about considering applying for the pathway program that we've created.
And it's a brilliant program because there are things, this would allow you the community, right? But also the grant gives you the opportunity to go take classes or courses that you know that you might need. So this is just fantastic. We're so happy to support. And thank you, Faith. So let's see, anybody have any questions? I've been keeping an eye on the Q&A, and we've been trying to answer them in real time, but anybody else have a question for us?
I think there was one for me from Zara, who said she's a WiST fellow working in the US, but she's from England near Brighton, which is actually where I'm from too. So hi, Zara.
Amazing.
And she's asking what the sports tech industry is like in England. Well, I think it's the same as in the US. It's a huge growing industry. And technology is advancing so quickly, and like I've been sharing, there's so many new ways of implementing that technology to improve performance and efficiency and fan experience, whatever it is. So I can't compare exactly how it is to the US, but definitely growing and thriving and booming. So yeah, if you come back to England, check it out.
Fantastic. Zara, what a small world, but she's from your neighborhood. You guys can actually have coffee when she's home. Fantastic. Well, let's see. Any other questions, anyone? Or anything, Alysse, Kendall, you'd like to add while we wait and see if we have questions? I'm with you, Alysse. If this industry had only existed sooner, it didn't even exist. Who knew? Right? It's been a wild ride, and this is the right time to be in this industry. I will add, having worked in sports tech startups and with venture capital, I think the time is better than ever for female founders and for all organizations looking for diverse talent. So we're hoping you'll take advantage of these opportunities in this network. We have a WiST LinkedIn community group that we'd love for you to join. It's a place to just look for like-minded people. The people who are in there are more than willing to be a mentor for you, and answer questions that you have. So let's see, we hope you'll join us. Adriana is here. We have some of our former WiST fellows, which is really exciting. 84% of WiST fellows, once they graduate from their school, end up working in the industry. So we know it's working, and it's not magic. It's exactly what should be happening. We have over 115 women now who've come through the program, and fellows are hiring fellows, which is wonderful. So let's see. I don't know that I have anything else to say. We're right at time. Anybody want to say anything else before we go?
Well, I'm going to just say the world of sports is dependent upon sustainability for its growth, and all businesses drive the sustainability of sports, but the most important are the people who are making the change, implementing the change, and then being the mouthpiece for that growth and sustainability. So it is that value comes from all aspects, all people, all cross functions. It is not just a network. It is a sustainable, growing, growth-oriented engagement. So it's different from what it was 20 years ago, that's for sure.
Yep, and use technology to build relationships, right? Everybody out here, it's about relationships. I was at a meeting with an MLB executive yesterday, and he said, the reason we're here is because you do tend to hire who you know. So we want to encourage all of you, don't be shy, reach out to someone who has your dream job, offer to buy him a virtual cup of coffee, and we hope to see you in this business. So reach out, stay in touch. We'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn if anything here resonated with you, or if you have other questions for us. So Thanks so much. And Faith, thank you to you and your team. It's just been delightful to work with you on this.
Thank you, you too.